Finally, it's my time. Hey all you Hillmaniacs, it's Hillmanator, and I need to catch up, so once again, time for me to break out that completely original idea. It's a Q&A time. Oh boy. So the first question that I've received is from my mum actually, and she asked, would I recommend a year abroad at university? It depends who to. Someone like myself, who's like okay with dealing with people online, who's more of an introvert, yeah, it's probably going to be a good time. Even a lot of extroverts will enjoy it, but if you're someone who relies heavily on the system that you've got in place, then maybe studying abroad isn't such a good idea for you. I'm not saying don't do it. I mean, there are plenty of people who you'd assume maybe something isn't good for them, and then it turns out that it's great. Who knows? I wasn't even certain that I'd have a brilliant time when I was studying abroad. I just knew I needed... It was something less I wanted to do and something more I needed to do, and I'm so glad I did. But would I recommend it for someone else? I think it depends on person to person. In general, I'd say it's pretty darn cool. I've enjoyed it, or at least I've enjoyed most of it. There have obviously been aspects which I didn't like, but there's aspects that I don't like about every single year, back home and over here. So, yeah, I'd probably say yes, I would recommend it in general. Obviously, there are exceptions, but probably yes. Next question is, what's my type? I presume you're not talking about Pokemon. Considering I released a video on my love life recently, I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say that that's what you're referring to in terms of type. And when it comes to that, I don't particularly have a type. I know it's cliche and all. I know, oh, look, he just thinks he's better than everyone because he claims he looks for emotion and whatnot. But genuinely, I'd say emotion's far more important to me than physical appearance. All of my exes have been vastly different in terms of physical appearance, but personality, I don't know, that's always seemed far more important to me. Well, when you're stuck with an ugly mug like this one, you just gotta learn to appreciate that personality a tad bit more. Oh, I just don't like my face. What are the worst things about studying abroad? There's a couple of things I could list. For one thing, I don't have easy access to all of the foods that I would want. Jaffa cakes cost a bloody fortune if I actually want to get them. And same with drinks. I've only seen like one place that sells dandelion and burdock over here. It's ridiculous. Then obviously there's the distance that you get from people who you are normally really close with, especially when you're somewhere like I am, where its time zones are so incredibly difficult. So, for example, at the start of last year, I was talking to my friends a lot, and then some of them I've not talked to in a while because the time zones just make it difficult for our schedules to line up. And that's alright, it just kind of sucks a little, but it's no big deal because whenever we do talk, it's still all good. So, yeah, that's probably another thing. And then the big sucker for me is actually going to tie into the next question, which is, how worried am I about coronavirus? It ties into that recent video that I did on it, which, yeah, if you haven't checked it out, annotation somewhere. But, personally, I'm not overly worried for myself. I think I'm going to be fine. I think the person who asked me this is fairly young, and they'll be fine. I think young people in general, students, if you're watching this, which according to my demographics, likelihood is you're somewhere between 18 and 25, so, you know, you're probably going to be fine. The big deal is self-isolating so that you don't potentially pass it on to someone who is vulnerable. For example, my dad is very vulnerable, which is part of the reason why I'm staying over here. If I catch it on the way back and then pass it on to him, then it would be bad times. Whereas if I catch it whilst I'm over here, no big deal. I can just self-isolate in here. But in general, I think... In general, I'm not overly worried. I think, hopefully, situation should have calmed down a bit by June, July sort of time. And, well, I really need it to have, because otherwise I'm just going to be stuffed. Because that's when my visa runs out. What are 5 differences between living in Britain compared to New Zealand? Five differences. Okay. Well, first big difference is going to be in terms of food and drink. Over here, you're allowed artificial colours, artificial flavours, preservatives in a lot of your foods and whatnot, and in all your drinks. In the UK, that would never happen. We're very, very particular about what we allow into our food and drink. So, like, Fanta, for example, I think I've talked about this before in one of my videos, but Fanta tastes nothing alike in the 2 countries because it's made up of completely different ingredients because they're allowed to put in so much sugary stuff in Fanta over here. Another big difference is something I've definitely complained about before. Single glazing on windows. Why is it a thing? Why? We have solutions for the cold. We don't need to have the insides of our rooms drop down to -4 in the winter. Just add some double glazing. Another interesting difference, I think, is the type of personalities that I generally meet. Kiwis as a whole, obviously not every Kiwi, but as a whole, a lot more relaxed, a lot more laid back in their attitude. It depends a lot on the person in Britain. You can get some who are super chill about everything, and then you get others who, you know the sort. You talking to me? You talking to me? You want to step aside? Alright, what's that? You talking to me? Those lot. Another massive difference, which I've definitely noticed over the summer, is the presence of cicadas. There's a lot. They never shut up. Never. Help. And one final difference is in terms of landscape. Now, technically these are 2 differences, but what the heck. First off, there's the actual, like, geology of New Zealand. I'm not sure whether that's the right term, but New Zealand seems to have a lot of small hills which are super steep at random points. Not in Hamilton in particular. Hamilton, as was said by my tour guide in my first week here, has one hill and they built the university on top of it. The rest of New Zealand, whenever I've been driving around, there's always been these areas that are just up and down because of all of these loads of tiny hills, and it's interesting. And second off, it's just far more rural. It's a lot less built up almost than the UK. It's, you know, like, for example, about 100 meters that way, there's massive fields that just go on for miles. And yeah, there's places like that all over. Hamilton Gardens is relatively close, and I think I showed you that in my O-Week vlog, but that's really nice and really well kept gardens. There's all those other places, Lake Taupo, there's quite a lot of greenery still around that lake. If it was in the UK, you know that the entire area around that lake would have been turned into one town. Yeah, it's nice. How do you find meeting new people? Have I made many friends over there? Over there being New Zealand. I've never been that great with meeting new people. I mean, I'm not completely inept. I can handle meeting new people relatively well. The thing is, I don't have an off switch. So when I meet new people, they don't meet like the calm down version of me that you would expect them to meet. You know, the, hi, I'm Josh, how are you? Oh, that's really nice, and then steadily build up. No, they get full scale Hillmanator. Hey, how's it going? How are you? Yeah, it's bad. Oh, but with that said, I have made a couple of friends while I've been over here. I've made a lot more in this semester actually than I have last semester. Unfortunately, a whole bunch of them have just had to fly back to either Norway or the States or various other places because of the coronavirus. But I've still got a fair few mates over here, a fair few Kiwis and other international students, and yeah, I'm kind of surprised at the fact that I was actually able to make friends, because I'm not very good at it. Truth be told, I'm a bit of a twonk brain. What's my favourite show to watch right now? Oh, to be honest, I haven't been watching much telly recently. Obviously I've watched Doctor Who, but this season I had mixed feelings on. Supernatural, again, I've been watching, but this latest season, this final season, has been just kind of, alright. I don't know. I guess that means that by default, the best show that I'm currently watching is The Last Leg, which, if you guys don't know, is a show where three comedians talk about the news. What sort of music do I enjoy listening to? Oof. So much. Just so much. I take elements of pretty much any music genre. There isn't one that I particularly prefer to another. I will listen to anything, more or less. I don't have even artists that I like, I have songs that I like. So, for example, I like Ed Sheeran's Photograph. I don't like an awful lot of his other work. I don't know, my music taste just seems to be a bit abstract. I generally will just listen to whatever the heck I want to in that particular moment. I've got a couple of playlists on my YouTube channel, which only I can access. Childhood music, which is just all of the music that I remember my older siblings playing back when I was like 0 to 13. Then I've got a couple of remixes, I've got some covers of other songs, I've got a calming music playlist. Yeah, I basically just listen to anything. I do have some things that I prefer, so I suppose if I absolutely had to pick a genre, I would either go for late 2000s pop punk or classic rock and roll, because that's a thing apparently. What is my favourite historical period? Ooh, that's a hard one. I really love history. I'm not sure whether I mentioned it before on my channel. I studied history at A-level. I considered continuing it at university, but I didn't want to have to deal with all of the sources, which is ironic because I do philosophy and religion. There's a lot of source work in that too. But I don't know, I really love history. There's so much cool stuff in history. Best periods. I'm a big fan of Rome, the Roman Empire. I like learning about the different emperors and which ones were brutal murderers and which ones were actually surprisingly decent. Same with Greece, especially Mycenaean Greece. It's not really known that much about Mycenaean Greece. It's a really weird era, technically before ancient Greece. It's confusing. Basically, I like the really old societies. I mean, I'm into more modern stuff. Tudors are quite interesting. I like the Tudors. You got some pretty interesting stuff going down in 17 to 1800s. But in general, I like my pre-1000 stuff. Apple or Android? I honestly couldn't care less. I'll use whichever one is currently available to me. As of right now, I have a iPhone 5S because I was given it, and that's literally it. but I will happily use Android or Windows or basically whatever the hell I can get my hands on. If you could have dinner with anyone from past history, who and why? I like that they had to specify past history because, you know, otherwise I might have gone for someone from future history and that could have caused a whole bunch of temporal paradoxes. There are a couple of people who I'd like to have dinner with from history. I think mostly it's going to be controversial figures from history, to be honest, because I just think they're the most interesting. I think Julius Caesar would be an interesting one. Believe it or not, a lot of Romans really loved Caesar as being their emperor, and the only reason he really got killed was because a couple of people didn't like the fact that he wore red shoes. Caesar was killed for fashion. I wouldn't really want to sit down with Cromwell. He seems like he wouldn't be fun to talk to. Hitler would be interesting just because of how utterly insane he was, but again, probably don't want to spend too much time sitting around with Hitler. Doesn't seem like a fun evening. I'll tell you who I'll go with. Charles II. Because, as we all know, those of us who grew up with horrible histories,
all say I'm the king who brought back partying.
and if I could visit anywhere in the world, where would I go? And do I have any recommendations of where to visit? There are so many places that I want to visit, but I don't know. It's difficult to narrow it down. Places that other people should visit? I mean, obviously, there's like traditional spots which everyone goes to, like London, Paris, Versailles, sort of thing. But sometimes there's some really interesting small spots as well. Like, I didn't make a video out of it, but quite recently I went to this place called Lake Rotopico, which I've got some photos on my Insta. But yeah, it's a really lovely little spot. I mean, I've always wanted to go to America just for a bit, just to, you know, experience that. Especially New York, which I know isn't the same as America, obviously. But I would really like to visit Antarctica at some point. But I'm not going to be able to do that until I'm rich and famous. So, you know, let's get on that. I don't know, there's too many places that I want to go. And I don't have the money to go to any of them. It's the next day, there's one question left. To be honest, I ran out of time to answer it last time. But I'm going to try and give some vague semblance of a thing. Basically, the question was to rank all of the Disney films I've ever seen, I guess. Which, I think it just said rank all of the Disney films, which would be impossible because I haven't seen all of the Disney films. In fact, I don't even think I could rank all of the ones that I have seen because I can't remember half of them because it's been so long since I have watched them. But I guess if I had to put one on top, I'd probably choose Hercules. It's a terrible representation of Greek myth. But if you set that aside, it's a pretty fun story. So, you know, I really like it. It's really good. And what was that? Give me one sec. When am I? It's you. Oh, that's weird. No. Hello, Josh. No, how can you be here? Of course I can come back from something as rudimentary as that. Which one are you? Oh, I'm not the one you're thinking of, Josh. But, trust me, you should be more afraid than you've ever been in your life. You can call me Hillman. I've beaten things like you before. Are you seriously threatening me? No, please. Who would dare to challenge me? Please. Well, let's see who strongly stands, shall we?